Welcome back, and we continue our discussion on the crisis at Eskom. Pindile Muketsi is from the ANC, and Natasha Matsone is from the Democratic Alliance. We were expecting Talimpofu from the EFF, but unfortunately he has not made it. I want us to talk solutions if we could, and I want to start with you, Natasha. How do we get out of the quagmire we are in here and now?
I think firstly we have to understand as South Africans that this problem transcends the bounds of politics. It is bigger than any political party. It is a South African crisis, and I think we have to realize that it is an incredibly serious crisis. We are teetering on the brink of a virtual possible blackout in our country. So as political parties, we need to be working together to solve this problem for all South Africans.
How?
The DA has offered, and we've put it on the table, we have tabled a piece of legislation called the Cheaper Electricity Bill, in which we would allow independent producers, generation capacity to come on board. What you would see is Eskom splitting into two. The transmission remaining the property of the country, but the generation slowly moving into a privatization section. We would like to see Petro SA entering into some kind of agreement with the government at reducing the tax cost of the diesel, because obviously we know that diesel is being used at a tremendous rate during this particular period. There are many solutions that we have, one of them being in the Western Cape. The Western Cape government actually taking going to court for a Section 34 declaration to allow independent power producers to be able to add on to the grid. This is not a time to play politics. This is a time to sit down together and look at the solutions that we have. The DA has asked in public, we've asked Minister Gordhan if he will sit down with us and look at our solutions. He's promised me a cup of tea. I think we passed the tea party part of the story, and I think we do need to sit down and look at the solutions that we have at hand. But certainly the Democratic Alliance would like to see the Cheaper Electricity Bill getting a lot of support from political parties.
Pindile?
I'm glad to hear Natasha says they are willing to come to the party. This is a national issue. It's a national problem. We are open. The minister is open to see you at any time. And I can assure you that with the capacity that we have currently, we will soon get out of this crisis. And we are on the block sorting out whatever that has gone wrong. No one is sleeping on the job.
But what are you doing? What are you putting on the table?
Currently, the minister has appointed a team of people that are investigating the technical issues that can be sorted out on a short term, mid-term and long term. And I can assure you within 2 to 3 weeks, the minister will be announcing.
You're stretching it. He said 10 to 14 days.
He said 10 to 14 days, that's 2 weeks. That's 2 weeks. In 2 weeks, he will receive the report. I am saying 2 to 3 weeks because he still needs to apply his mind to it. Apart from that, if that is done and the technical team sorts out what can be sorted out now, I promise you the capacity is there.
Mr. Mpofu, welcome. From where the EFF sits, how did we get here first, and what are you putting on the table as solutions?
Well, Vuyo, firstly, we think that the crisis was created, obviously, by mismanagement. I think this story about teams and investigations is just, no South African can believe that anymore. We've had all sorts of things, from war rooms to, crisis new boards and this, that, and the other. And now we're told that there's going to be a report in 2 or 3 weeks' time. That report may or may not suggest that there's a long-term solution. So it's just government doublespeak. Actually, these people don't know what the problem is. That is, if you decode what has just been said to you, is they don't know what the problem is. They don't know when it's going to be resolved. They don't know how it's going to be resolved. They don't know how much it's going to take to resolve it. So we are in the dark, literally and figuratively, about this solution. There is no way that any government, if actually they had a solution at hand in an election year, a few weeks before an election, that they would allow something like this to happen. They just don't have a clue, but they're not coming clean to South Africans to say they don't have a clue. As far as the solutions that are proposed, including this privatization move that is coming, we reject that, obviously, with the contempt that it deserves. And we see the so-called unbundling as nothing but a precursor to full-blown privatization. We have it on good authority that the government has been advised by some of the leading private investment houses about the unbundling, even about the appointment of the so-called chief restructuring officer or something like that. And that same document that gives that advice makes it clear that not less than 16,000 jobs are going to be lost in the process. So this government is not coming clean to our people. There is no way that a utility like Eskom should be just sold to the highest bidder, because the result of that is that electricity will only be available to the rich and the poor will not be able to afford it.
Now, before I get to your solutions, I want clarity from you, especially Pindile, because Natasha says, agrees with you on the breaking down of Eskom. But then she adds something. She says that the one part would have to be privatized. And is that your position as well?
I can safely tell you that privatization is not on the cards. It is not on the cards. Every action taken is to make sure that we safeguard the energy of South Africa. I can safely tell you that we will not reach a blackout. It is well managed. We will not reach a blackout. And I would appeal that we stop saying load shedding, but we say load sharing. It is a national problem that we need to be together in it.
Please, he's laughing
just
at
to
you.
respond,
She's shaking her
just
hand.
to respond to Dali, privatization is at the tip of your tongue. It's incorrect. We can engage on that outside this interview, and I can safely tell you all the teams that have been put together to assist Eskom. You're referring to the war room. That was for a different problem at that time. Now there is a technical team. Give it 2 weeks or 3 weeks and engage on it.
Both of them say privatization is a no-no. Why are you insisting on it?
Well, it's quite clear. The more people you have offering opportunity and energy to South Africa, you widen the market and you create competition. When you create competition, you bring prices down. It's the classic model. So to say that you must have a monopoly stranglehold, we can't. Eskom simply cannot produce electricity for South Africa. They have tried, they have failed. We are in the midst of their failure as we speak. The way Eskom is structured at the moment, it simply cannot rectify itself. 420 billion rand in debt and counting every day. It doesn't matter how many commissions we have, how many war rooms we have, how many talk shops we have. This entity is broken. We have to decide here and now, do we save Eskom or do we save South Africa? And the way we save South Africa is by opening the energy market to competition, allowing people to come in. It will create massive builds, it will create an increase in jobs, and it will dramatically drive down the price of electricity.
Bring in competition, privatize. Well, you obviously agree, but what are you putting on the table as the EFF?
Well, what we're putting on the table is firstly to resolve the issues of corruption and mismanagement,
which they say they are dealing with. They are strengthening the state law enforcement agencies, and they have all these teams working on both the technical as well as the management side.
But this is what these people told us a year ago when they put this current management on the board, that they were resolving the problems. A year later, we're in a far worse situation than we were before. So either this board is incompetent and the current management is incompetent, or the problem is not being properly diagnosed. Of course, the DA will say you must have privatization, but that I can assure you, it will be like putting petrol on the fire, because what happens with privatization, South Africans must just take an example of private hospitals, private schools. All that will happen, you'll be told, for example, you and I are free to go to a private hospital, except that when you get there, you're not going to be admitted if you're poor, you don't have the money, and so on. So you cannot commodify a public good, such as electricity, to that extent that it will only be available to those who can afford it. The very reason why you have a public utility, such as Eskom, is to ensure that electricity is distributed to the poor primarily, or that there's cross-subsidization between the rich and the poor and so on. Those measures will not happen if I sell it to you, Vuyo, Eskom, all you are interested in is to make profit. And I cannot tell you about the poor in some rural area and so on. You're going to say, look, if I have to sell it to the people of Sandton only, if that's how I'm going to make my profit, that's how I'm going to make my profit.
It's true, though, what you're saying, isn't it? That, I mean, if you really had a solution in an election year, you would have solved this problem a long time ago.
Energy is not about electioneering.
Okay, that's where we're going to leave it. Thanks to all three of you for coming through. Pindile Muketsi from the ANC, Natasha Matsone from the DA, and Advocate Dalim Mpofu from the EFF.